Hijab, I would suggest, represents about 99% of the Muslim world. This is the classical Islam. This is the Islam that never asks any questions any deeper than you just memorize. You just obey. I want to show you why Muhammad Hijab had to ask this question. And I've sent you the clip, and I'd like you to put up the clip if you could. Now, before we put the clip up, I want to give some background to it. And I don't know if all of you know who Hatun Tash is. If you don't know, get to know her. She did a trip down to Morocco. She went down to Morocco to do a trip there to do some teaching. And she needed to get a Quran. So she just walked into the first bookstore she could find there in the marketplace and asked them if she could have a Quran. And they said, well, which Quran do you want? She says, what do you mean? Just any Quran. Well, which one? Do you want Hafs? You want Warsh? And they said, what do you mean Hafs and Warsh? I thought there was only one Quran. They said, oh, no, there's quite a few different ones. We have about, I don't know the whole dialogue, but he said there are numerous ones that we have here. He said, well, give me the first one you have. What's the most popular one here in North Africa? They said, here, the Warsh. So she took the Warsh and she came home back to London. And then she now listen, this woman doesn't even speak Arabic. She's not Arab. She's Turkish. But all she needed to do was put the two Qurans side by side. And she saw, oh, this word looks different than this word, or this phrase looks different than that phrase. So she circled them, and she went back to her Arab friends there in London and says, is this the same? Say, no, that's different. No, that says different. And they would translate to her what the difference says. Then she realized these are completely different words. These are completely different verses. These are completely different meanings. In some cases, these are completely different theologies. So she started sending out the message to all her friends all over the North Africa, and she had 26 of these different Qurans. And they were finding not a few differences, they were finding hundreds, not hundreds, thousands of differences. So we talked about it, and I said, why don't we take these down to Speaker's Corner? Let's just hold them up. Look what happened. And take a look and see who's there.
Did everyone catch the Muslims there at the end calling everyone away from those 26 Qurans? Everyone back up.
Who was the tall man there? Who was it? Do you recognize him, David?
That was the mighty Muhammad Hijab, destroyer of Yasir Qadhi's career.
To begin with, it's important to understand that the Quran read by Muslims in different parts of the world is not always the same. In Islamic tradition, the faith itself acknowledges the existence of qirā'āt, multiple readings of the Qur'an, each passed down through its own line of transmission. Each qirā'ah has its own phonetic and morphological features, and in some cases these variations lead to changes in the subject or meaning of a verse. Take, for example, Surah As-Saffat, verse 12. In the Hafs reading, it says, "You, Muhammad, wonder." But in the Khalaf reading, it says, "I, Allah, wonder." That's not a minor difference. It raises a serious theological question. Who is actually speaking, Muhammad or Allah? Changes like this have real implications for Islamic doctrine. And it goes beyond just differences in pronunciation or vowel markings. These qirā'āt often vary in the actual words used, even in the structure of the sentences themselves. Research by manuscript experts like Dr. Dan Brubaker has shown that early Qur'anic manuscripts, before they were standardized, contain word substitutions, insertions, omissions, and even altered grammatical constructions. Some of the oldest manuscripts found in Sana'a, Topkapi, and Paris preserve variant readings that differ from the modern Hafs version most widely used today. This tells us that the Quranic text has undergone editorial development over time, rather than being preserved in a final, unchanging form. This becomes even clearer when we consider what Caliph Uthman ibn Affan did. According to Islamic tradition, he initiated a standardization process by gathering one official version and ordering the burning of all other copies. That action alone confirms that multiple versions of the Quran existed at the time, and that the unification was enforced, not natural. If there had truly been just one version from the beginning, there would have been no need to destroy the rest. Modern Muslims often say these differences are merely about pronunciation, but in reality, the situation runs much deeper. The differences include grammar, verb forms, and in some cases, even theological meaning. Prominent Muslim scholars like Dr. Shady Nasser from Harvard and Dr. Yasir Qadhi have openly acknowledged that the Muslim world has failed to honestly address the textual complexity of the Qur'an. Yasir Qadhi himself has called it a deep and serious problem that should not be discussed in public because it could shake the faith of ordinary believers.
That was him in that crowd. And he was the one pulling all the Muslims away.
Mhm.
And I've known Muhammad Hijab all that time, and we've known him for quite a few years. And we've done a few debates there. If you go up on Fander Films, you will see a debate that and I did, and he's just sitting there going like this, showing his muscles. That's about all he could do in that debate. It was on this very material. It was on this very thing that we're talking about right now. So that was in 2016. We went down 3 different times with those Qur'ans and held them up. The last time we went down there, we almost didn't leave the corner. They were so upset with us. They did not want us to leave with those Qur'ans. They tried to grab our bag. They broke the handle. Some of the young men followed us and were trying to get in the way from us leaving the corner. It was such a catharsis for them. They had never come across this before. And as I looked at these young men, you could see that they were having panic. They were having a crisis. And I suggest that Muhammad Hijab was in panic mode as well. He was having a crisis. And that's why I can't prove it, I think that's why he wanted Yasir Qadhi to put this to rest. No one has been able to answer the question that he couldn't answer back then in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
He had to pull them out of the crowd. He had to say, come to me, come to me. What would he have told them?
Mm-hmm.
What would he have showed them? You notice they tried to pull the papers from our hands where we were giving side by side, the hafs and the warsh, the hafs and the qalun, the hafs and the kunbal. We were just showing differences, huge differences. We had about 70. Now, listen, since that time, Hatun and her team have found 93,000 differences. 93,000 differences. She now has 37 of these different Qur'ans. There are 30 that are considered to be standard, or there are 30 that are now supposedly are the standard 10. You have the 10, which are the readers, and they are Nafi and Ibn Kathir and Abu Amir and Ibn Abi al-Dimashq and Asim Ibn Abi, excuse me for my pronunciation, Hamza al-Zayyat and al-Kisai and Abu Jafar and Yaqub al-Yamami and also Khalif. Those are the 10. Those are the 10 major ones. The first 7 plus the other 3. The first 7 that Ibn Mujahid canonized in 936. Look at the date, 936. This is the 10th century. So those are the first 7 that were canonized by Ibn Mujahid. Now, another 3 were then added by al-Jazari, and he died in 1429. So you're talking the 15th century, another 3 were added. But with each one of these 10, there are 2 narrators or 2 transmitters. And it's the 2 transmitters, which makes another 20, that gives you 30. So that's how you get 30 of these qirā'āt. Not 1, not 2, but 30 of them. But you can then understand why our good friend Muhammad Hijab had to ask this question. He was having this problem back in 2016, and he was hoping, and he was really hoping, that our Yasir Qadhi, who is a world-renowned scholar, who has a PhD in the Qur'an, has done all this work, is well-known all over the internet. He wanted to come and ask this question, a simple question.
By the way, this is very common amongst Muslims, that they think that, well, even if I couldn't answer this question, my leader could, or a scholar could. Right. That is their attitude. That was always like even way back when I was talking to Nabil, that was his attitude. Even if he would get stumped, I do not know how to answer that. He would have complete confidence that there is a solution, that if he just gets the right Muslim scholar to ask him about it, then he can fix those doubts. On this issue right here, because you posted, that was posted back in 2016, watching the Muslim responses, it was all, the first response is, those are different translations. So you have to explain, no, those are different Arabic Qur'ans. And then the next response is, oh, but those are just differences in pronunciation. And you got to, no, they're actually differences in the text. And then the response is, no, these are just for different dialects. And no, there's something else, right? And they're going down the list. And then it's, well, why don't you debate Zakir Naik on this issue or something like that, right? They really believe that if you get the right guy, if you get the right Muslim scholar and sit him down, he can clarify all this and show you your doubts are silly. Muhammad Hijab gets Sheikh Yasir Qadhi, and Sheikh Qadhi, we're going to ask you, and you're going to fix all these problems. And all of a sudden, Hijab has to realize, whoa, this is not going the way I wanted it to. I'm going to throw you a softball here. Obviously, you being a great scholar, you could put together, even if you're acknowledging there are all these problems and all these questions we might not be able to answer, at the very least, if I gave you some blank paper, you could write the Quran that goes back to the time of Muhammad. It's not an easy answer. And Hijab replies, I think it should be an easy answer. And Yasir Qadhi's response is, okay, if you want to believe that. But guys, if you think about the position that Hijab was putting Yasir Qadhi in, Yasir Qadhi has to live a double life. He goes amongst Western scholars. In order to get along and be respected amongst Western scholars, he can't be spouting complete idiotic nonsense like one Quran perfectly preserved right down to the letter from the time of Muhammad. He would be laughed out of Yale for saying something that ridiculous. But on the other hand, he can't be saying the stuff that he would admit at Yale in a scholarly environment. He can't say that amongst your regular Muslims, because it will completely destroy their faith in one Quran perfectly preserved right down to the letter.
Many modern Muslims, including public figures like Muhammad Hijab, often reduce the issue of multiple Quranic versions to a simple rhetorical answer. Just ask the scholars. They believe that if a well-qualified Muslim scholar is brought in, all doubts will vanish, as if the complexity of qirā'āt, aḥruf, and early manuscripts is merely about pronunciation, and that it all goes away once someone knowledgeable explains it. But one of the most revealing moments in modern Islamic apologetics came when Muhammad Hijab himself tried that exact strategy. In a public interview in 2020, he invited Dr. Yasir Qadhi, a highly respected Muslim academic, graduate of Madinah University, PhD from Yale, known for being both moderate and intellectually sharp. Hijab's goal was clear: silence the doubts and bring clarity to the issue. But instead of clarification, what followed was confession. Before a global Muslim audience, Yasir Qadhi openly admitted that the issue of qirā'āt and aḥruf is not a light matter. He called it a deep and serious problem that most Muslims are not aware of, and added candidly, "It's not wise to discuss this in public." Even more shocking, when Hijab pressed him further to explain, Qadhi replied, "Even I don't have easy answers for that, and I don't want to cause doubts." These words didn't come from an Orientalist or a Christian critic. They came from a Muslim scholar himself, someone trusted to have all the answers. And this was the collapse of the narrative. The belief that the issue of Qur'anic variants could be resolved simply by consulting a scholar was shattered. Because in reality, even the most educated among them are reluctant to address it openly. And if the experts themselves don't have easy answers, how can the average Muslim confidently believe there's no issue at all? That interview didn't just shake the Muslim community, it reshaped how many people viewed the textual integrity of the Qur'an. Muhammad Hijab, who intended to shut down the doubts, ended up exposing the intellectual vulnerability that had long been hidden behind silence. Since then, Yasir Qadhi has faced intense backlash from within the Muslim world, and public discussion about qirā'āt and aḥruf has become more restricted, more cautious, or quietly avoided altogether. In the end, what has been revealed is not the unity of the Qur'an, but the fear of talking about its differences. Because when even the most credentialed scholar says this should not be discussed in public, that is not a solution, it's a warning. A warning that the claim one perfect unchanged Qur'an can no longer survive under the weight of historical facts and textual diversity, facts that have long been buried beneath silence.